You wake to the sound of the whole village gathered outside. Not for a feast, not for a celebration. They are gathered because you broke a rule, and now everyone you have ever known is standing in a circle, waiting to see what happens to you. There is no judge in a robe, no courtroom, no lawyer. There is only the group, and the group has already decided. For most of human history, this was what justice looked like, and the punishments people invented were far stranger, far more creative, and far more revealing than anything in a modern law book. Let's look at the weirdest ones your ancestors actually used. Start with the oldest problem in any human group. What do you do with someone who won't stop causing trouble? In the ancient world, before prisons existed, you couldn't just lock a person away. A prison requires walls, guards, and a surplus of food to feed people who aren't working. Small ancient communities had none of that. So they got inventive. And one of their favorite tools wasn't pain at all. It was silence. Anthropologists who study small-scale societies have documented something called the silent treatment, raised to the level of a formal punishment. Christopher Boehm, an anthropologist who spent decades studying how egalitarian human groups keep order, described how hunter-gatherer bands enforced their rules without any police, any chiefs, and any jails. Their most powerful weapon was social. They would mock you. They would gossip about you. And if that failed, they would simply stop acknowledging you existed. Think about what that actually meant. In a group of 30 people where your survival depended on cooperation, being ignored was not an inconvenience. It was a slow-motion death sentence. No one shared meat with you. No one helped you hunt. No one spoke your name. You became a ghost while still breathing. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It was leverage. The threat of being erased kept even the strongest, most aggressive members of a group in line. Boehm argued that this pressure was so constant across human prehistory that it may have actually shaped our psychology. Your deep, gnawing fear of embarrassment, of being excluded, of what people think of you. That may be the fossil of 100,000 years of survival, depending on staying in the group's good graces. But social pressure was just the beginning. Move forward to the first cities and the first written laws, and punishment became something you could carve into stone. The Code of Hammurabi, written in Babylon around 1754 BCE, is one of the oldest surviving legal codes on Earth, and it is spectacularly, bizarrely specific. Hammurabi's laws famously followed the principle of an eye for an eye, but the way that principle was applied could get strange fast. If a builder constructed a house and the house collapsed and killed the owner's son, the punishment was not to fine the builder. It was to put the builder's son to death. The logic was symmetrical to the point of being alien to us. Your crime didn't just belong to you. It belonged to your whole family. And some of Hammurabi's punishments handed the verdict over to the gods entirely. If a man accused someone of sorcery without proof, the accused was thrown into a river. If the river carried them away and they drowned, they were guilty. If they survived and swam to shore, they were innocent, and the accuser was put to death instead. This is called trial by ordeal, and it rested on a belief that a divine force was watching and would protect the innocent. The water itself was the judge. Trial by ordeal did not stay in Babylon. Versions of it show up across the ancient and medieval world for thousands of years. People were made to hold red-hot iron or pull stones from boiling water, and their guilt was read from how their wounds healed. If the burn festered, you were guilty. If it healed cleanly, the divine had spoken in your favor. Now here is where it gets genuinely eerie. In the peat bogs of northern Europe, archaeologists keep pulling out bodies. Not skeletons, bodies. The chemistry of a bog preserves human skin, hair, and internal organs so completely that some of these people look like they died last week, even though they died 2,000 years ago. They are called the bog bodies. The Danish archaeologist P.V. Glob wrote the definitive study of them in a book called The Bog People, and what he and later researchers found was disturbing. Many of these preserved individuals did not die of natural causes. Tollen Man, discovered in Denmark in 1950, was found with a leather cord still knotted around his neck. Lindo Man, pulled from a bog in England, had been struck on the head, strangled, and had his throat cut, all in what appears to be a single sequence. Why the overkill? Archaeologist Miranda Aldhouse Green, who has studied these bodies extensively, has argued that some of them may have been executions or ritual punishments, deaths designed to satisfy not just a legal need but a spiritual one. The triple death wasn't inefficiency. It may have been the entire point. The manner of your death carried meaning. Some researchers believe the placement of these bodies in bogs, in the boundary between water and land, was deliberate, a way of sending the punished person to a place that was neither the world of the living nor a proper grave. Whether every bog body was a criminal, a sacrifice, or something we don't have a word for, we may never fully know. But the pattern points to a truth that runs through all of these examples. For ancient humans, punishment was never only about the individual. It was a message to everyone watching. That is the thread. Let's pull it. In ancient Athens, around 2,500 years ago, the citizens invented a punishment so clever it still carries their word for it. Once a year, they could hold a vote. Every citizen would scratch a name onto a broken piece of pottery, a shard called an ostracon. If enough people wrote down the same name, that person was banished from the city for 10 years. No trial, no specific crime required. If the community simply decided you had become too powerful, too arrogant, or too dangerous, you were gone. We still use their word for it today. We call it being ostracized. Notice what that punishment does. Doesn't hurt your body, doesn't take your property, it takes your belonging. And there it is again. That same ancient weapon the hunter-gatherer bands used, now formalized into a democratic vote on bits of broken pottery. So let's reconstruct the moment you're standing in that circle, back at the very beginning, with the whole village watching. You probably assumed the worst thing they could do to you was physical, a beating, an exile into the wilderness. But look closer at what all of these punishments were really engineered to do. The silent treatment, the family-wide penalties of Hammurabi, the ritual deaths in the bog, the shards of pottery in Athens. Almost none of them were about causing you pain. They were about controlling what the rest of the group believed, about who belonged and who didn't, about making an example so vivid that no one else would dare follow you. Here is the counterintuitive twist. We tend to imagine that ancient punishment was more brutal than ours because ancient people were more savage. But that's backwards. Their punishments were social because their survival was social. They didn't have institutions to absorb a rule breaker, so the group itself had to be the police, the judge, and the memory. The strangeness of their methods wasn't a sign of cruelty. It was a sign of how completely a human being depended on staying inside the circle. And you carry that circle with you still. Think about the last time you felt your face go hot because you embarrassed yourself in front of people. The last time you replayed a conversation at 2 a.m., worried you'd said the wrong thing. The last time a group chat went quiet after you posted and your stomach dropped. No one was throwing you into a river. No one was scratching your name onto pottery. But your body reacted as if your place in the group was under threat, because for almost the entire span of human existence, it was. The weirdest punishments your ancestors used were never really about breaking bones. They were about breaking belonging. And the reason those punishments worked, the reason they could keep an entire species in line for hundreds of thousands of years without a single prison, is that they were aimed at the one thing every human is most afraid to lose. You woke to the sound of the whole village gathered outside, and the quiet ancient terror you felt in that moment, the fear of what they might decide about you, is the same instinct that still makes your heart race when you feel the group turn away.